And they said among themselves, "Is this not the carpenter's son? Is not his mother called Mary? And aren't his brothers James, Joseph, Simon, and Judas?" So Jesus had 4 brothers that were listed: James, Joseph, Simon, and Judas. It's widely held then and believed, based on the description that's given in the first verse and based on early church tradition, that the Jude who wrote this book was indeed the brother of Jesus. Now, it's interesting because Jesus' other brother, James, wrote the book of James. And so you have Jesus' 2 brothers who initially did not believe in him. After he rose from the dead, both of them not only believed, but they would eventually write books of the Bible that were inspired by the Holy Spirit. So in verse 3, Jude writes, and he says this. Look at verse 3. "Beloved, while I was very diligent to write to you concerning our common salvation, I found it necessary to write to you, exhorting you to contend," or to compete earnestly, "for the faith which was once for all delivered to the saints." Jude had a desire to write the church. And he wanted to write the church and talk about the things that they had in common, their common faith. He wanted to write about the gospel and what Jesus has done for us. He wanted to talk about the grace and mercy and love of God, the peace of God. However, as he sat down to write about that, Jude said he couldn't, and he said he found it necessary. He was being compelled to write about something else. The word that's used there for necessary, it means to be persuaded or to be compelled. The idea is that Jude was persuaded in his heart by the circumstances, and he said, I want to write about our common faith. However, it's necessary, I feel compelled, I feel persuaded to write to you about the dangers that he saw facing the church. And he says there in verse 3 that he wrote this letter exhorting them. He wanted to exhort them to contend for the faith. He wants to exhort us to contend for the faith. The word that's used there for contend, it's an interesting word. In the Greek, it's the word apagonizomai. And it's only used in this verse of all the New Testament. The root word is agonizomai. And it's used to describe the competing, the striving, the agony that goes into competition or practice or getting ready. In fact, we get the word agony from agonizomai. That word in the New Testament is used 7 times. And when it's used, it's translated as strive or compete or fight. It's the word that's used when Paul writes Timothy in 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 12. And Paul implores Timothy, and he says to him, fight the good fight of faith. It's that word fight, it's agonizomai. And it means to contend, to strive, to fight. And anyone who's competed understands the agony of competition. Now, if you're just in it for fun, if you're just in a competition for fun, then you miss out on agonizomai. Because you're not putting forth the effort that's needed to actually compete. Growing up, there was always this level of increased preparation. When you're in Little League, you may have practice once a week, maybe twice a week, and then you'd have game days.